this is kind of a nice side note from this tournament. If you look at the Karsten data under Jeskai control, you'll see that Jeskai control went 3-8 against Eldrazi Tron. So it sounds like a really bad matchup, but do you know who got all three of the wins? Me. And zero of the losses. So I think it's a great matchup.
Okay, Jacob, you finally returned from your 2-week venture. How was the traveling part of the trip?
On the way there, excellent.
Okay.
For those not in the loop, I traveled with my fiance and my son, who's now 3 months old. And I would say, a big part of that travel is, having a baby is kind of scary. And I would say the flight's there. He was totally fine. It's not like he slept the whole way through, but it was no different than if we were at home with him. Just had to do some diaper changes and maintenance like normal. But it seemed like he wasn't affected by the plane at all. Like a day or two before we were returning home, he just started getting a lot more fussy than he ever has been, and that definitely carried through on the way home. So that was a lot worse. But
yeah, did you have any delays or something? I thought you told me about maybe.
Yeah, kind of a nightmare series on the way home of events. I kind of want to save it for the sign off, to be honest.
Okay, funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're recording like a little late, and we missed last week, but thanks everyone for sticking along. I hope you enjoyed the episode with Jarvis Yu. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I listened to it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, at the end, I'm going to touch on our scores, how we did.
Yeah.
I tallied it all up, and we'll go through it at the end for our predictions. So for today's episode, we're going to be covering mostly, mostly Modern and the Pro Tour. Maybe touch a little bit on the Team Sealed tournament you played as well, although probably briefly at the end.
Yeah.
Talk about your testing process and the deck you settled on and all of that. So just to get started, Jacob, how were you feeling going into this Pro Tour? How'd your testing process go? And
yeah, so I'd played the Spotlight in Vegas, and that was kind of refreshing because it was kind of a nice big competitive tournament that it's not the exact same format but still Marvel limited. And been drafting, had a couple single limb trophies along the way. Mostly started switching to single limb and Modern, more than a week out, kind of exclusively. Did no like in-house drafts with my team or anything like that because I didn't join their testing house. But I felt pretty good. The process was kind of interesting because, a lot of my team was on the same page as to like what kind of, we had a section in our Discord called Contenders, and those, were the decks that basically if anybody on the team was seriously considering registering it or multiple people, it was kind of up there. And that was kind of mainly like Amulet Ruby Storm, the Jeskai Chant deck, and Eldrazi Tron, I think, were the big four for a bit. Some things weaved in and out. We had Devoted Druid, like a day of playing a lot of Devoted Druid, or the Red-White Stone Rain kind of deck had a lot of attention. We had good meetings, I think, where we talked about things kind of on a more macro level. And a question like I would propose, I think multiple times, was like, does anybody want to play a deck even that like cares about your opponent's life total? Like just that style of deck. And people talked about, the strengths of Boros or Prowess, and Affinity's kind of that way too, though Affinity I'd say is a little bit more of a combo deck where, like the Kappa Cannoneer doesn't really care about your opponent's life total. And just kind of traditional beatdown decks. And yeah, just they didn't seem that well positioned to us, I guess. So we played against them a lot in testing, but we also didn't like innovate on them within our own lists. But I was kind of the one really championing the Chant deck. And I had a cycle of feeling like, there's actually some Magic Online challenge lists from a while ago where somebody was doing well cutting all the Narsets and Days Undoings, and I really liked that. And then those all started popping back up again, and I gave them a try. and I don't like hate them, but when I registered at the Pro Tour, didn't include them. So obviously I opted against it at the end, and I was the only one on my team registering Chant. In the end, I think we started with 13 or 14 players on the Boulder. Only 11 of us played this Pro Tour due to people deciding to defer kind of at the last minute, or somebody's flight got messed up and he just didn't want to deal with it and got deferred. Um, so 6 of us played Amulet, 4 of us played Ruby Storm, and I only played Chant. But you know, it kind of reminded me a little bit of when I was on CFB, where I felt like I kind of got stranded playing Belcher. One other person on that team played Belcher with me, but I think it was, you know, this is a group of people that I'm used to working with and asking the right questions, and I think they're pretty good at communicating with me. And they told me, like, if they thought they were better at the chant deck and had been playing it, that they would play it.
Okay.
Um,
So they didn't sort of abandon the deck uh in principle of like how they thought it was a bad deck. They just went with something that was probably a comfort pick for them.
yeah, well, the amulet thing was more of a process of elimination, which I think means they weren't doing due diligence on amulet. To be honest, I was kind of worried for them on that aspect. Where like, you know, they a lot of the players on that team that played amulet have just played a lot of amulet before, and we kind of do like these, metagame predictions combined with what we think our contenders are, like their win rates against all of our metagame predictions.
Hmm.
And Amulet was just kind of coming out on top of those things, and I feel like it was kind of the least verified, though. We were kind of just verifying other things. Like, for example, this was the one I kept calling my team out on. They said they thought that Amulet was like 60% against Boros, like a huge favorite. And we played some of that matchup, and it feels very close to 50-50. In general, Boros, weirdly, people call Modern a die roll format, but Boros is one of the most die roll, like, dependent decks in the format by a
Yeah.
lot. It's just so much. It's kind of that aspect I'm talking about where it cares about life totals. Like it kind of just needs 4 turns, and it's pretty like it's surprisingly resilient still, just because its individual card quality is so high. That, like even though it doesn't have Flage to come back from a sweeper, like you can just reload to the board or flip a Johnny if they give you too much time, which is a resilient thing to do in itself. So yeah, even as my Jeskai Chant deck, I think that deck's a little bit behind against Boros, but not by much. And I would guess over 90% of matches like I would play at the Pro Tour level at least, the person who wins the Dara would win the match, is kind of my guess in that matchup.
I mean, relatively small sample size, but the data we do have from this event was that Boros was actually ahead against Amulet Titan.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
went
not surprising
56%
either.
against him.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so going in, you're on Jeskai Chant. I'm gonna read your deck list in just a second, but basically the event ends up shaking up to be what, a lot of Boros and then a lot of Affinity. And then sort of the thing that surprised me and caught me off guard was there was a lot of Kozilek commands decks.
Yeah.
Um, Especially the Brood Scale thing. I think multiple teams showed up with a lot of Brood Scale because it ended up being the third most popular deck.
Yeah,
Did you expect that at all?
not specifically brood scale. I just did a write up to my team. We always do these kind of, we call them post-mortem channels, kind of about what we
Hmm.
did right and wrong. And I touched on the brood scale thing where I wouldn't have predicted it to be specifically brood scale, but not also something that also that I didn't, what's the way to put it? Not brood scale, I guess is how I would put it. Just that naturally teams are going to show up with like a lot of, they might end up all on the same deck. And I think that'll add, I don't know, like 2 or 3% to what you might expect to that deck. And Modern's so diverse that it's hard to kind of predict what deck that'll be. Um, and for Brood Scale, it happened twice this tournament, which is why it's such a big jump.
I see.
But
Yeah.
even in the end, that's only 5 to 6% more than you'd expected. So it's not like going to make a major shift on our preparation.
Right. Right. Yeah, because with some rounding, I mean, Boros Energy, Is Infinity, and Brood Scale are all about 12% of the metagame, and then Eldrazi Tron about 10%. So lots of Kozilek's Return. Kozilek's, or not, I'm sorry,
Yep.
Kozilek's Return. Kozilek's Command. Kozilek's Command was the most popular card in the event.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
and overall did very well.
Honestly, you somebody on my team called that the best card in Modern before the event. So
Hmm. It's a very good card. It's funny
Yeah,
because it's the kind of card that other decks would probably play if they could, but it's
yeah,
kind of
it's
restricted
really
through an
restricted.
archetype.
My deck would play it if it could. I've seen some lists where people try.
Oh wow. Yeah, I mean it really just has like every mode you'd ever want on it
Yeah,
almost, as far as four modes go. Okay, so you ended up registering Jeskai Chant. So your list was four Teferi Time Raveler, two Teferi Hero Dominaria, one Narset Parter Veils, four Solitude, three Wrath of the Skies, two Prismatic Ending, one Stock Up, four Galvanic Discharge, four Orm's Chant, three Consult the Star Charts, two Counterspell, two Tune the Narrative, one Force Negation, one Spell Snare, two Isochron Scepters, and then for the lands, you had 23 lands and one Lorien Revealed, four Arid Mesa, four Flooded Strand, two Island, two Meticulous Archive, two Plains, two Scalding Tarn, a Hollowed Fountain, a Mistrise Village, a Monumental Henge, an Ottawara, a Sacred Foundry, a Steam Vents, and a Thundering Falls. So these blue white control decks were like decently popular at the event and they actually did pretty well. Although I noticed that at least for the data, the decks that had red did worse for some reason. And it looks like you ended up in red. You felt like, just the splash of what is it? Just Galvanic Discharge here.
just so have a discharge of fire magic in the sideboard, and I'd say another nice part about the red splash is I have the Mistrise Village entering.
Oh,
Not always untapped. It's bit
but it
me in
can't be.
testing and at the Pro Tour, but it also has been very rewarding for me, including at the Pro Tour.
Okay. Yeah. So, are there any specifics about your deck that you find that you're playing that other people aren't?
Yeah, I mean,
Something like
so I'm
that.
not playing the Days Undoings. I'm only playing one Narset, which the like a couple of the last changes I made to my deck included I had the Narset in the sideboard for matchups where I thought it would be especially good, and I had a second stock up main, and I cut that second stock up for Narset to fit in another sideboard card. I think at the time it was the Rest in Peace I'm playing. Um, and then the other last second change, just for some insight, is what my deck list looked like. Is I had a second Spell Snare, which I cut for a Force Negation that was in my sideboard, and I added the Fire Magic as a last minute add for something against Boros.
Gotcha. So your sideboard is four Consigned to Memory, two High Noon, two Mystical Dispute, an Ashiok Dream Render, one Celestial Purge, one Fire Magic, one Rest in Peace, one Supreme Verdict, one Wrath of Skies, and then you companioned Kihira.
yeah,
Okay.
I still quite like this deck list. There's a couple changes I'd make, which I can get into later. I even in day two, Nasif was just chatting with him because we also have had kids recently, and he was looking over. Asked if he could just look at my deck, and I said sure. And it was kind of interesting seeing his commentary. I think his least favorite thing about my deck list is I had all four Solitude.
Oh, interesting.
Um,
Why was he so opposed to that? Is it because you have some red cards in your deck, or?
Yeah, I kind of was viewing it as my victory condition in some matchups. There's some matchups I want four. There's some fours a lot. It's not a great deck for pitching it, but it's a really good deck for playing to hardcast it. Um, One of the changes maybe I'd consider making is cutting the fourth one for a consult the star charts or whatever I think the best card draw spell is,
Yeah,
and just
doesn't that make
moving.
them harder to pitch once you
Um,
do that?
Not real. The most
More so?
common card you pitch to Solitude is Kahira by a lot, so it wouldn't really change that.
Huh. Okay.
You kind of just set up turns. This is it's not a lot of instance in this control deck, I would say. You tap out for stuff a lot, and kind of by that same nature of not really needing to pass with mana up, I found, I would be planning ahead, maybe a Wrath of the Skies next turn even, but I'd take the opportunity to just grab Kira pretty aggressively when I could.
Mhm.
I wouldn't really try to bluff or anything.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean the Orm's Chant stuff is quite good. There are some matchups where Scepter is really vulnerable, but there's also matchups where it's basically untouchable, and it's your best card in those matchups. Eldrazi Tron is the main one, where they don't actually have ways to remove it from the battlefield. Um, so that's pretty unique. They can only in post board games or some people main deck Disruptor Flute, which is an out to it, but that's also a card that you can kill with
Okay.
Prismatic Ending, or if you bounce it to Fairy, then they'd get to Fairy locked at that point and they wouldn't be able to cast it again. Um,
Okay. So this is your deck going into the tournament. I know you played a lot of draft. The one thing that was interesting about this tournament is the top eight was actually draft.
Yeah.
which is something interesting. I didn't realize that until pretty last minute, but
Oh yeah.
I wonder. Do you know why they made that decision? Do you think
They made
they're
it a
just
while ago. Yeah, I remember I think they announced it at the last Modern Pro Tour Edge of Eternities.
yeah?
Um,
I'm guessing it's some kind of experiment, or like maybe they thought because it's a modern pro tour, the new cards weren't going to show up a lot, so they thought
yeah, I
doing a
don't.
top 8 draft would do that.
Yeah, or I don't know if Marvel got involved and cared. Um,
Maybe
but
like they, yeah,
Marvel slash Disney. Yeah, I mean, when I thought about the upsides and downsides of this multiple times in the last almost year. I think there'll certainly be less viewership on Twitch and YouTube. The live stream viewership is really negligible, I imagine. Like even if it's a huge decline in viewers, like it's probably like a four-digit amount of money difference in the end. It's not really a big deal to have a lot less viewers on the actual live stream itself because that's only generating, I think, literally like single thousands of dollars. Um,
right.
and then the YouTube, long-term stuff, that would matter a lot. I feel like people would be more likely to revisit modern by a lot. So that might be worth a lot. But then, yeah, I don't know. If, like, I do think maybe if the top eight being draft gets more people into drafting, that's a huge, long-term investment for Wizards.
Yeah, I would
Maybe
say
better than getting
so.
people into modern.
I I would think at this point that well, certainly I don't think the monetary value either way is a factor at all. I think it's more of like a marketing
Yeah.
the whole thing way they would view this is like a marketing
It's just
aspect.
weird because it's a format that's, over in 2 weeks.
It is. Yeah. Not exactly sure, but well, anyways, I could see them doing it again. I mean, I enjoyed it personally, but it's because I actually like booster
Yeah, I
drafting.
watched it. I
Modern,
liked the
I don't
part where
follow
they
too
showed
much.
everybody's first eight picks at the same time. That was one of the coolest things I've seen.
Yeah,
I hope they do
yeah,
more stuff like that for just the normal feature drafts.
yeah. Was this a factor at all for you to prepare for more draft?
Yeah, because it's like in the back of my head, I want to win the whole Pro Tour.
Yeah,
So when I imagine myself winning the whole Pro Tour, it means I have to be better at draft than I ever have been. So yeah,
right.
it
So
did
it was a
impact it.
factor.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm curious about your event. So I kind of know how it goes. Um, but how does your first draft
Yeah.
take
So
you if you want to start going
I
through
don't
it?
have my draft decks in front of me this time. So I'll just try to do most of this from memory. The first one is a really simple um, story, luckily. Um, I open Avengers Under Siege, the Red Black Saga. That's very good. I'm curious where it is on 17 lands right now. Let's see. It's 68.9% win rate, which looks like there are five, six, seven cards with a higher win rate than it. So the eighth highest win rate card in the set.
Mhm.
Notably, it's in like what people would say is the worst color combo, red black. Um, but that's kind of almost more telling for its 17 lands data, right? If it's in the worst color combo and has such a high win rate.
Oh yeah, that was just
Um,
my thought. I was actually
yeah,
surprised it was so high.
yeah. I mean, this card I would say is like one of the more surprisingly good cards, if that makes sense. Like you don't think it's as good as it is till you play with it, and specifically when you just like have it on turn four, like 2/2/2/1 menaces. That's a lot of menace power. If there was just a card that just did chapter one of this card for the same mana cost, I think it would be like a playable card in limited. Um,
I
Maybe
think
in
a
other
lot of
sets
its
where red black is better.
I think a lot of its power is that it's a 4 mana saga, which have done really well in draft formats so far when they're really powerful, especially the rares. Because like a saga is hard to interact with, you're always going to get value out of it, and 4 mana is cheap enough that like most games you draw it, you're going to be able to cast it.
Yeah, and then so like sometimes the second mode is completely devastating. Sometimes it kills one thing, and both of those, if it kills one or more things, this card's like kind of off the charts broken. But even when it kills nothing, like it does 2 damage to your opponent, and you are untapping, 4 power menace, assumedly, and then if your opponent did have non-villain creatures that didn't die to it, they have 2 damage marked on them, so like they're not going to block your 2 and menaces on that turn. And then the treasures show up like just in time, like turn six, in this world where you played this card on turn four, for you to like play like a double spell turn that's like two big spells, like a 5-drop and a 4-drop. Um, Stuff like that. That's usually what happens with this card, I would say, where it just like this is usually what happens with the card when it doesn't kill anything, to be clear. It's just like you're just like in this great racing scenario where you have this 4 power worth of menace. They're taking 2 to the face. They're not really able to have good blocks on your menace turn. And then the next turn, you just like kind of play to the board way too effectively with the extra mana. And then any game it kills stuff, your opponent's completely like really far behind.
Yeah.
Um
So
anyway,
so
so
when you pick this, are you thinking you might splash it, or are you actually kind of happy to go in on black red since you know it'll probably be underdrafted?
yeah, not that I want to go in on black red. I think I'm happy with splashing it or just being black red. Notably, this pack also had was it Ant Man, the rare Ant Man,
Hmm,
which is actually it's pretty low on 17 lands, C minus.
it's okay.
But the
Yeah.
color combo is quite strong. But I didn't really consider taking it. But like I wondered after the draft, I like asked my teammate, and I'm like, is the green blue like so much better than black red? But no, and like thinking about it afterwards too, the stats are pushing white cards up and red and black cards down on 17 lands. So that almost makes it seem better than what the stats are saying.
Right. Right.
Because just being white is like better and being red black is worse.
Hmm.
So then I second pick I have a choice between Lightning Strike or Secret Invasion, but Secret Invasion is quite good, and I don't want to like commit to just taking a Lightning Strike so early. Um, and maybe I would be blue black and splash the Avengers Under Siege card. Um, and then pack 3 I get Ares, which is not like a super bomby card. Um, one sec
But
here.
it's a pretty above rate 3-drop for if you're exactly red black. So that's interesting.
Yeah, obviously when I already have Avengers Under Siege, I'm very happy to take it. And then the rest of the draft goes in a way that when I register my pool after the draft, all of my cards are either red black colorless or the red black tapland. I did not take a single card that was not red or black after that Ares.
Okay. So,
It's not exceptionally strong, but like I didn't feel like I was like taking bad cards for the sake of being red black either.
right. Right. It's funny. One of the things me and Jarvis talked about was whether or not red black would actually do well in some pods at the PT. And so from your position when you're at the PT, you drafted the worst archetype. Did you have like a super open lane? Was your deck pretty powerful?
Yeah, my lane did not feel like it didn't feel closed off, and I'm resending you a picture of my deck. I have this like Avengers disassembled that I also opened in I think pack 3, which I don't even draw a single time this draft, so it didn't matter. Maybe I drew it once in the game I was already winning or losing badly.
Hmm.
Um, and I send up so like my 2 drops, are not exceptional. 2 Agents of Hydra, 2 Hydra Assault Robots. I end up with 2 Visions of Villainy. I have decent removal, Cruel Alliance, Double Repulsor Blast, Hour of Defeat, and Photon Blast Barrage and Avengers Disassembled. Um, I have this copy of the Masters of Evil that I remember in the draft too. There was like a pick where I was considering the Masters of Evil, but I like took something safer. Not even removal, I think, but maybe like a Ninja of the Hand type card. And then I immediately got another Masters of Evil, and I just think it's really good in these types of decks to like turn on these cards to be really big, especially the it's so good with Avengers Under Siege. I was talking about that turn 6 kind of with the treasures. Even if you don't hit all your land drops, you could play Masters of Evil, but also like I would be playing Masters of Evil, but also another spell, sometimes a removal spell in the same turn. I remember one of the games specifically. I think I played it plus Cruel Alliance on turn 6, and the game was kind of over. Um, anyways, yeah, I didn't get past any like super powerful cards late, which made me think that my colors weren't just like extremely open, but also maybe that I was the only person drafting red and black at the table.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it doesn't look like it looks like maybe a slightly above average red black deck, which I feel like for this format is not saying anything super great about it. But
yeah, I mean, I would say in hindsight that you should be pretty happy to be drafting red black when you have Avengers Under Siege
okay.
after playing with this card even more since then and against it.
Yeah.
Um, to be honest, I don't remember too much about my opponent's deck specifically, with the exception of round two. So I 3-0'd this draft. Um,
All right.
yeah, so that was great. The funniest part about the draft though was that in round two, my opponent was also red black. Um,
Hmm.
and I would guess they had like 14 of the same spells that I had. Our decks
Funny.
were incredibly similar. They also had Avengers Under Siege and Ares. So
Where
our
were they?
drafts
Where were they
probably
sitting?
like 3 seats to my left.
Interesting.
So a lot of the cards that because I had a lot of moments in the draft where like I picked maybe a removal spell over like Villainous Hideout or something, pretty great for my deck too. And anytime I had one of the decisions in that draft, like that card was in my opponent's deck.
Okay.
But then
Fair
for the
enough.
most part, like we had
You
so
got
many
your
of the same
leftovers.
cards. Claw. We both had like I remember that Masters of Evil I was talking about, where like I passed it and immediately got another one. Well, my opponent also had Masters of Evil. Um, and yeah, I lost game one, played Avengers Under Siege on turn four, game two. They played Avengers Under Siege on turn four, but I won because I was on the play basically. And then game three, I drew Avengers Under Siege and they didn't.
Okay.
It's basically how that felt like. And then yeah, I drew that card a lot, and that's probably a lot of why I 3-0 this draft.
Okay.
I remember versus one of my opponents. Oh, yeah, actually. Okay, I'm remembering round one now. Um, my opponent played turn five Photon, the backside of Monica Rambo in round one, and did not have much follow up. And I had Agents of Hydra and Ninja of the Hand, and was just attacking into it with those and getting in damage, and just kind of was able to win around it. Um,
Okay.
so that was nice. They had to get very flooded. And then game three, they kept a weird one lander on seven, um, where they like missed their second land drop, but then hit more lands. And like their one land was like a red white dual land. They were a blue white deck splashing Monica, but their keep had like Agent Maria Hill and double Brave Brawler among other cards. So they were kind of like maybe incentivized to keep a one lander on the draw because it had so many cheap cards. But they had already seen through the other two games that I had Photon Blast Barrage and Avengers of the Siege. So that game I ended up Photon Blast Barraging on like 6 mana to kill basically the entirety of their keep of their one land.
Yeah.
um,
Yikes.
and it's just like the reward for that hand seemed a little low. I think they agreed afterwards, which is why I'm just talking about it now. But things to keep in mind when you're keeping risky hands. Even I like keeping one landers that have a lot of cheap spells, but in this matchup especially, I have two Agents of Hydra too. It's like what these cheap spells are not very good. Um, against my
Yeah.
deck.
So the success case like
Yeah,
wasn't even there if they
yeah,
they drew their lands. Okay.
yeah.
All
I
right.
don't remember what I had to beat the trophy. I don't. It didn't seem exceptionally scary. Um,
Okay. So you 3-0 with like kind of a good version of a bad archetype.
yeah, I think it's a good lesson, and sometimes limited is about drawing your best cards, and I think I drew Avengers Under Siege a lot.
Okay. Makes sense. Um, so you're looking pretty good to make day two because you only have to get what is it, 4 wins to make
Yeah,
day two for Pro Tour, and you got 5 rounds constructed coming up. Just before we get into it farther, what record did you need for this tournament, like bare minimum? Obviously, you're trying the top 8, but was
yeah.
there a
Nine
record you
nine
needed to?
wins would have given me the requalification. Um, in most cases, because I got 10 wins at Pro Tour Lore and Eclipse, so Spelementals, but then I deferred. Um, most of the time, if you qualify for a PT, let's say your first PT or your first one in a while, if you get 10 wins, that's the threshold to re-invite. And then from there, if at the next Pro Tour you go 9-7, you'll actually get 2 invites through the AMP system. So that's a pretty cool way to like get on the train. It's how a lot of people kind of start getting on the train. And what I did or what I needed was 9 wins, but because I skipped the Pro Tour, it's only going to be worth 1 invite because AMPs basically look at the last 3 Pro Tours.
Gotcha. Okay. So you need 9 wins. So yeah,
Yep.
getting off to a good start. Okay.
Yep.
So how's Constructed go for you on day one?
Yeah, so I play against Matt Shu, who is playing Eldrazi Tron. Um, yeah, my memory is not going to be amazing, maybe just for day one specifically. I'm remembering a lot more about day two. But it doesn't help that I played another big tournament between these two events. Um,
Yeah, probably not. It's not a big deal if you can't
yeah,
recover everything, but
so I like this matchup. Going into it's part of why I picked my deck. I think Isochron Scepter is exceptionally good here. I did not like Days Undoing in this matchup. Um, kind of going back to my deck list choices, people were telling me about various matchups where they thought the Days Undoing Narset combo was quite good. I think sticking Narset's quite hard against this deck because they have Ugin and Devourer of Destiny. So like it's just gonna die to those, or maybe they resolve the Thought Knots here and you don't want to deal with it fast. So I actually think Narset is quite hard to stick in this matchup. But even if you do, you know, the Days Undoing combo in my mind is almost a 3 card combo because like the main phase Days Undoing with Narset compared to like doing it with Teferi still gives them 1 card off the Days Undoing and then the draw for turn. And a deck like Eldrazi Tron that might have 10 mana in that spot can easily kind of beat you with 2 fresh cards.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
So I guess structurally your deck, the reason it's good in this matchup is it's not so much like a control deck in the sense that you grind your opponent out. It's more of like you're
I'm
trying
kind
to
of a
set
prison
up a
deck.
lock. Yeah.
Yeah, and they don't have, like I said, obviously Karn can stop the Scepter from working, but I have, discharges in my deck. This will be kind of a interesting thing because I played against Eldrazi Tron 3 times this tournament. But there's a lot of spots this tournament where if my opponent had played Karn and maybe plussed it, it would have ended up being really good against me. But they don't know that with like hidden information, and it's kind of tough to do that. And pretty much any time except for like maybe once or twice, my opponent had a Karn resolve and I didn't have the answer, and then I lost. Um, but I just killed Karn a lot with discharge, and a lot of those times my opponent got liquid metal coating too. So then that was kind of useless.
Yeah. What's the fail case for them if they plus it? I mean, they know your deck list, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I like play Big Teferi and tuck it, or
Sure.
discharge it anyways because my deck can generate energy.
Yeah.
I'll say I love the energy part of my deck. I think another kind of thing my deck has that the other Jeskai decks don't have is the Tune the Narratives. I had one a lot, was really liking it, but it kind of looked like a goofy card to me, so I was kind of like, maybe I won't play it. Anytime I didn't register it in testing, I put it back in, and I kept putting it back in so much that I went to 2, and I'm pretty happy with 2. I'm also, 24 lands is kind of short on lands, and the Tune the Narratives I think are pulling a little weight there. Um, Another thing, Narset doesn't find lands, so stuff like Stock Up, being able to find lands, I think also pulls a little bit of weight there on like hitting your land drops. Um,
But I
but
guess Narset can find like Lorien Reveal or two in the narrative, a
yeah,
Jeskai
but
Flare.
it's not very many cop. That's not a very consistent thing to have happen.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas like yeah, like from a deck building perspective, I kind of chose Big Teferi as a win con, which I liked a lot. It's weak to Mystical Dispute definitely, um, but you have a lot of stuff in your deck that's just going to get disputed along the way, and then it's quite good to like combo with Orm's Chant the turn you play it, where you kind of just play a fog with it. Um, my biggest complaint about Big Teferi, to be honest, is that if you get to the stage where you ult it and you make the emblem, I think you're basically 100% to win, except not versus the clock. Um,
Yeah.
if your opponent wants a draw, they might be able to play for one in that spot by not conceding mostly. They're not really going to perform any more game actions as you start exiling all their lands. But like if that card just literally said you win when you -8 it, which in the context of modern, when you've just had it in play for so long, I think is pretty much it's like above 99% you'd win, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Um, like I think it would be great in this deck, but the clock issue is like a real thing I'm fighting with this deck, which is another like huge minus for Days Undoing. That card's kind of slow to resolve in paper. The Amulet matchup is another one. I played a decent amount of because my team played Amulet, and they were telling me that Days Undoing was pretty great in that matchup, and I found that was not true at all. Um, a lot of games they just get Otawara in their hands, sometimes face up, and you can't go for the combo into Otawara because they'll just bounce your Narset, and you don't pressure them in any meaningful way to like make them tap out of Otawara. They'll just hit their land drops with 4 mana up while doing everything else.
Yeah. In terms of the Teferi thing, I mean, I assume like so you can deck them with it, right? You can like plus your Teferi and you can like minus it on itself to do the whole tuck thing to deck your opponents before you deck once all the
Yep.
permanents are gone.
Yep.
Is this only happen in games where they've killed all your Solitudes and Kahiras, or you've bitched them all or whatever?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, um,
I guess some of the time they might have some blockers or something.
no, you would answer their blockers with the Teferi ult.
Oh, right.
But just yeah, maybe all your threats are gone. Their life total might be very high because you've cast a lot of Solitudes.
Hmm.
Um, just stuff like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
I do see looking at this deck how it could definitely the clock could maybe be an issue. Did you get any draws?
yeah, I got a draw in round 8 and against Brood Scale, which we'll get into more. But my opponent was like at 45 life that game. Um, kind of talking about what you're talking about. Though I wouldn't have really needed the Fairy Tuck thing. That one I have a lot of memory about leading up to that draw, so I'll be able to explain that later.
Okay.
I know a funny thing from this round is in game 2. So I think I lost game 1. I'm not even sure I'm unfavored game 1 against Etron, but post board when I can board in 4 consigns, I think I'm really favored. Um,
That makes
so,
sense.
like I like this matchup a lot. You can put the consigns under Isochron Scepter too, and it's very good. Just stuff like that. I think Karn is really the scariest thing. It's worth noting in this matchup too, if they like somehow resolve an Ugin and you still dig into Scepter Chant, like first of all, it's sometimes they're scared to ult Ugin because if you chant them in response, it'll burn the entire ult. But also, if you get Scepter Chant down, game 1, a lot of these lists don't even main deck Flute. Only Javier's team does that, and Scepter Chant beats an Ugin in play game 1. They have no outs to it. They can't cast spells. Like it just
It,
doesn't matter. They can
it's
cast
color and it's
Cosmos from hand.
colorless. Yeah.
Yeah. So like you'll just eventually answer the Ugin with a big discharge because you can make energy or something with Rathless guys. But also if you get Teferi down, they can't kill the Teferi because they can't cast spells or whatever. A big Teferi can answer the Ugin too, where I play an Ottawara. Um,
Yeah.
actually, in this matchup, I found stuff like the Ottawara and Big Teferi was pretty nice because I'd have my opponent frequently resolve Ugin against me, and I would kind of not be that scared and just maybe eventually slam Big Teferi and tuck it and be fine.
Speeds up your win condition. You just leave it in play.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
plus it.
So to that note, really the scariest card they have is Karn, but the discharges, like I said, give them a lot of awkwardness where it can't be that scary against you.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'd say another way I approach that matchup, they play these things like Chalice of the Void and Trinisphere. I kind of just let those resolve and eventually clean them up with Wrath of the Skies. Um, one of the games, my opponent had Chalice for one, Disruptor Flute, naming, Consigned Memory, and then also Trinisphere. And despite all of those artifacts being in play, I could just like pass with 5 mana and consign and still be safe against Karn.
Yeah.
Because you can still just like replicate it to get through the trigger and pay 3 extra mana for it, which also gets through Trinisphere. I remember what happens also. So so I lose game 1, game 2. I'm Scepter Chanting them at some point. I've kind of found in this matchup you can keep hands that just have like your stuff like Stock Up and Consult or the combo. Like that's kind of what just matters the most. Um, it's kind of like acceptable to just be proactive yourself in this matchup, I think, and just try to assemble your little mini combo. My opponent's not conceding, even though they've been pretty nice. I don't. I feel like I just have this sense from them that they're not conceding because they believe they have outs. But I got small Teferi in play, so they can't play a flute. And I'm just playing my turns extremely quickly. I'm like just plussing it, activating it, getting like the Kahira into my hands, playing the Kahira, hitting them for 3. And then they discard Cityscape Leveler to hand size. And I'm like, oh, like they boarded it in and now. But like that only works when you cast it or attack with it. And I didn't even realize that till after the match, but I just like cast a big end step Wrath of the Skies for like 5 on their end step, use 0 of the energy, and then had discharge in my hand. But I could just start kicking the chant and they can't attack with it, so it doesn't do anything.
Right. Yeah, that's my thought.
But then game 3, on the draw, my opponent on a turn, like maybe on their turn 3 and my turn 2, I have Counterspell and Consign, and my opponent casts the Stone Brain. And I think I remember they cast a turn 2 Cosmos Command for 2 or something. And then on turn 3, with the spawns in play, they play a Stone Brain. And I'm just so worried about Karn that I let it resolve because I have both Consign and Counterspell. And they use it and they name Orm's Chant, which I have one of in my hand. and they see my counter magic, and I think this is the same game I'm like passing into their hate rocks with consign up. Um, they eventually lose to Scepter plus consign with like a big Teferi.
Okay. So that's generally how you would expect that matchup to go then, or certainly the way you win.
Yeah.
Um, all
So
right.
next round against Max on Affinity. Um, game one, an interesting spot. I'm like playing out my lands in like this weird order. I don't want to even play them. I think I have like Thundering Falls or something I can't play because I realize I need like triple white on turn four to play Orum's Chant plus Wrath of the Skies for one. And my opponent seems like they have Rebuke. They have three Rebukes in their deck list. And on the turn, they pass with like Saga Chapter 2, two Fiery Islets, also Mox Opal, also a bunch of artifacts from like weapons manufacturing. And I play this chant before playing my fourth lands, which is going to end up being like Monumental Hinge. And they rebuke it, which makes me think they have a second rebuke. But like I still just jam the Wrath of the Sky so they can't make a construct and they get the rebuke out of their hand, and that happens. And then they untap, make another construct, end up like needling, I want to say Isogon Scepter, and also playing Kappa Cannoneer. So pretty big turn for them, and I immediately draw another Wrath of the Skies, but I don't have any energy yet. But I managed to like I like grab Kahira and pass with Discharge and play a tap land or something, and then like do the math, decide I don't have to pitch my Kahira to Solitude, take this hit because they don't actually have that many weapons manufacturing tokens. It's like three, and then discharge the construct end of turn. After they played out like their last card in hand, pre-combat for damage, and then Wrath of the Skies to kill their whole board, and they only have like Fire Islets left that they crack the rest of the game while they die to Solitude. Um, games 2 and 3. Game 2 is this weird thing where I think I'm playing around Rebuke too much, and I kind of die to playing around it too much instead of maybe just jamming spells. And then game 3, I've like stabilized kind of, but I like do it. I kind of play scared with Wrath of the Skies and only cast it for 0 instead of 2. So I clean up their whole board except for not weapons manufacturing, and they like untap and play Mox Opal and Engineered Explosives or something. And like I'm gonna die to the Ignitions on their next turn because they don't actually have. I don't remember why they don't actually have the mana. Maybe they crap. Maybe they played a preordain that turn, and then I cast Stock Up. In my head, I had like boarded in 3 consigns, and I'm not drawing any of them. And I'd also cast a lot of consults that game, and I hadn't shuffled yet. And I'm at like 3 life versus 2 munitions. And I'm thinking if I just find a consign, I got this in the bag. Because I'll just consign the weapons triggers when they go to crack it. And I don't find consign, and I just like kind of am out of it. I actually felt like I multiple times during this match, I felt thirsty, like literally for water, which was pretty distracting.
Okay.
And anyways, I realized afterwards that I could have like set myself up, like I had already grabbed Kahira that game to have like just played Kahira and had Solitude to be able to Solitude my own Kahira and just like kind of forgot I could do that. And so
Yeah.
then I'm just hoping my opponent doesn't crack their explosives to blow up their own board because they're playing around consign, but they do and they kill me. And then I fixed the hydration problem the rest of the weekend, so I'm not going to bring that up as an excuse anymore. But I do
It's
think,
an interesting perspective on like, when to play around stuff and when to go for it. Where you might have got a little punished for playing around stuff and your opponent got kind of rewarded for not playing around something in one of the matches.
yeah,
Um, is this matchup overall? I mean, you've got all these like Wrath of Skies in this stuff main deck. Is this matchup overall one of your better matchups? I would think it would
yeah,
be.
I thought it was one of my best matchups. My opponent played it very well and it's kind of scary for me. And
Yeah,
yeah, I think I could have won all 3 games.
tough. Yeah. Well, Affinity is a strong deck, so yeah, they could definitely put together wins.
Yeah,
I don't know where. Yeah. So you lose there, no big deal. 4-1. What about round 6?
yeah, against Slacks, Jesse Hampton on Espergorios, who I've played against a lot of Pro Tour since my return to the Pro Tour. I played against him at OTJ and at Lorwyn Eclipsed.
A
Um,
little bit of a
this is a
grudge
matchup
match.
that I thought was really good for me when I tried Narset Days in doing. I had a very positive set, and then I tried it again after cutting all those cards, and I thought it was quite bad for me. Um,
Hmm.
Narset is just really good against like Riddler, and um, if you have Teferi in play, then all of a sudden it's even better against some of their other cards. Like Faithful Mending doesn't work, stuff like that. Days Undoing, this is the matchup where just Time Twister is quite good, I'd say. Because they're going to Thoughtseize you. They might get hits off with Frog. They might Goryo's Atraxa and go for an Ephemerate, and maybe you evoke Solitude. All these things that are horrible from a card advantage perspective. But if you can just keep the board clear and then just like resolve a Days Undoing, maybe with a chant, even, and you just like if the game state is that you both have 7 cards in hand, 5 lands, and no graveyard and no creatures, you're really far ahead, I would say. So it's a really good matchup for just the fair Days Undoing.
Yeah, I guess resetting their graveyard matters quite a bit there.
Yeah, the graveyard hit aspect matters a lot. I know eventually they'll hardcast Atraxa. I think you can win the games where they're hardcasting Atraxa. That's not that big of a deal.
Sure, it
It's
takes
just
so long
much.
anyways.
It's so much of their mana on that turn. So if you can start doing multiple things as like a response to that, then and you're doing prison things at the end of the day, right? Like, so if you lock them out of the game, like they can have a bunch of cards in their hand. If their way to get a bunch of cards in their hand is clunky, then that's fine.
Right.
But post board, they go up to 4 Thoughtseize. Every single list has some weird split of Thoughtseize that's like 3-1 or 2-2. They have their own mystical disputes. You have yours. Games often develop where people just play lands out. Jesse took a risky line in game 2 to lose, I'd say. He like I'm on the play. I play just like a surveil land on turn 1. I top my card, and he goes fetch shock Thoughtseize, which indicates to me that he's going to try to play a frog on turn 2. Because normally you just like sit there and both fetch surveil lands the other turns and kind of let things develop because you both have mystical disputes. And my hand is like Rest in Peace, double to fairy, a land, and a solitude or something. And he takes a solitude, which makes me think, okay, what's going to happen this game is I'm going to play Rest in Peace. It's going to resolve. He's going to play Frog. I'm going to play Teferi, and he's going to force negation my Teferi. That's kind of like immediately why I think he would take Solitude. The top card of my deck is like the land I'm supposed to play. So I like play a land, play Rest in Peace. It resolves. He untaps, plays Frog. I haven't like drawn anything. I have 2 Teferi Time Raveler anyways, so I jam Teferi. It resolves. I bounce his Frog, and he kind of just gets owned from there.
Huh.
Because Teferi plays so good against them. What it was is that he was missing the blue card for force negation at the time of the
I
fight.
see. I mean, that kind of makes sense.
But he thinks maybe he just takes Rest in Peace and should just play, more of a normal game.
Yeah.
It's not, a total disaster matchup, but I guess I would say with my deck list going into this tournament, I thought Boros, which I already explained, a little bit unfavorable. They're more likely to break this play draw dynamic than you are, but mostly a play draw matchup. I thought Prowess was just going to be like a pretty bad matchup for me. They're just really aggressive. It's hard for me to keep up from like a mana perspective. They have haste damage and burn, so like my Wrath of the Skies aren't like amazing. And then I thought this matchup was pretty bad.
Okay.
But I kind of liked every other matchup.
Yeah. Well, you do. Funny enough, I'm looking ahead a little bit. You do get a pretty wide variety of matchups. I guess you play Eldrazi Tron a lot, but other than that,
yeah. So next round, I'm against Ruby Storm. We didn't end up doing a team count. I was asking my team in day 2 at some point how many times they won on turn 2. To be clear, the 10 people on my team all played Amulet Titan and Ruby Storm decks that can win on turn 2.
Yeah.
This round, game 1, I play a Scepter, put a Chant under it on turn 2, and my opponent untaps with Ruby and like plays Hex Magic, and then with their last mana plays Man of Morphos, and I force them negation it, and they realize they can't win and concede, so I got a turn 2 win. And then
okay.
and then game 2, I kind of don't put any pressure on them, and it's long and grindy, and they eventually, they just keep chaining divinations, play Bats and Flames, kill me. Game 3, I'm on the play. They play like a turn 2 Rends Resolve, hit spells, and then I don't have like a Teferi in play turn 3 or whatever. I don't know what I'm doing if I'm just like casting Stock Up or something. But then I'm probably passing with like Galvanic Discharge. I really like Discharge in this matchup, Ruby Storm, because you always have the option of letting the Ralph flip and then discharging it after if you want. Because the nature of Ralph flipping is that there's a spell on the stack, they're not going to have priority to like immediately ult it. So I like that you don't have to like play into this weird game of like, well, what if I discharge their Ral and they like cast some instants in response,
Right. Okay.
You could just let it flip if they don't have a massive storm count. Anyways, they had hit a resolve off a resolve. They play the second resolve, and they hit like Ral and another card and miss their land drop. Um, and then I go to my turn 4 and I have Scepter Chant. Now, oh, I remember. I cast High Noon this game, and they already cast a Wear Tear, one of their 2 sideboard Wear Tears, which is they only have these 2 sideboard Wear Tears to kill the chance or like the to kill a Scepter at instant speed. So one of those is already gone. So I just jam Scepter Chant, but we keep playing. A notable thing though, they have 2 Silence and 2 Orms Chant in their board. Those cards can get out of Scepter Chant because in response to me activate, because the Scepter lets you cast a copy of the card. So if I activate Scepter and in response they cast Silent or Chant on me, then I can't cast my copy, and then I can't cast spells, and then they could just try to play through the whole rest of their turn and win. If I have a counter spell or another copy of Chant or something, that would be a very good response to those things. I don't have that those games, so I'm kind of scared, but this is a game where they had already missed their land drop, and I'm locking them out of developing for the most part. So they're just taking like natural draw steps and end step Manamorphoses to try to like assemble a hand that could maybe kill me if they upkeep Silence, and then the last turn of the game, they're thinking about like an upkeep. It's very obvious they have a Silencer Chant because every upkeep they're thinking, and they don't go for it. And I have like the end of turn, like just unkicked Consult, and I find Small Teferi, which locks them out of the game.
Okay. So Ruby Storm, another good matchup. You win that one. And then, okay, round 8, you play Bruised Sail combo. And this is your draw, huh?
Yeah. So my opponent was very nice. I don't think like nice in like a shady way either. I recognize their name. I think they've been playing a lot of PTs recently. They're Canadian. In this game, at one point I have Narset in this match, and they like play a Fleshraker, and they think for a little while, and they play a Bauble, and they think for a little while, and they crack the Bauble, and I let them draw a card, and they think for a while, and they play Ballista, and then when they play the Ballista, I think you shouldn't have been able to draw a card, and I call a judge. And the judge offers basically that we should rewind to the Bauble draw, but I think that's really unfair to my opponent. And I try to ask if there's a meet in the middle solution. They say either we could do nothing or we could rewind to the Bauble draw, and I kind of just think let's just do nothing. But I could have gotten them on that. I think all of these things must be happening in game 3 when I think about it. No, because the Ballista was still in their deck, which is part of why they didn't concede, even though it didn't matter. So we both get a GRV for that. Oh yeah, I got a GRV against Jesse Hampton, and when he had his big Teferi in play, he had small Teferi. He played it, plus it to 5, and I'm like resolving stock up. And then after I resolve stock up, I play Scepter and imprint Discharge and try to discharge the Teferi like down to 2 with the plan to do it again next turn. And as soon as I like do that, he's like, I don't think there's any possible way you could cast a spell under Scepter when I have a Teferi in play. And I'm like, you're just totally right. Like,
yeah, okay,
like sure. It's just never going to allow that with how timing restrictions work.
Yeah, so for just to explain the lingo a bit, GRV is game rule violation. So
yeah.
Anytime a judge has to get involved, if someone like missed a trigger or did something improperly, you get one of these, and if they add up over the course of a tournament, you can start getting bigger punishments, basically.
So yeah, that judge call over the Bauble that ended up not being detrimental for my opponent got me a second GRV, which puts me closer to maybe a game loss. Which my opponent doesn't seem to be gunning for or anything like that, to be clear. Then later in this match, my opponent casts Ancient Stirrings. It looks like to me they grabbed 5 cards. They stare at it a second, say the word 4 out loud, grab another card, and immediately call a judge on themselves. Because it was just 6 cards. I think, if they didn't call a judge on themselves, I would have made sure it was 5 cards, but they did it so fast, and I would have stopped them if they basically did anything besides say 4 out loud, of all things they could say. So that was really funny. That one's an easy fix or whatever. The 6 card didn't even hit their hand, so that just had to get shuffled in. Then in game 3, I had Ashiok, which I liked sporting in this Brood Scale matchup. It stops like the Saga Search, and it kind of helps keep them off Emrakul. And they go to Chapter 3 of Saga, and they reach for their deck, and I say, don't search. And they go, oh, thank you. But had I let them search, I think I could have gotten them a game loss. Because that would have been a 3rd GRV of the same game.
Yikes.
Not that I really want to win that way, but it's a little unfortunate because the end of this match, I have this Ashiok in play, I had they like had an Emrakul turn against me, but didn't matter. I solituded it. That's a common feature of this matchup, is you solitude their Emrakul, but let them take your turn, but it's okay. Um, I ulted Big Teferi on turn 3 of turns, played a new Big Teferi, finally minus my small Teferi that I was hanging on to exile an extra permanent. Had this Ashiok in play, but my opponent's just like at 45. In the middle of me doing these things, they just say, I really need AMPs for Worlds, so I'm not going to concede. And I say, okay, well, if that's that, then like I don't even bother. But it's a little like upsetting because I think what I wish I had done is played through turn 5 of turns to really demonstrate to them that they weren't going to win at least. Because I think maybe
Yeah.
from their perspective they weren't 0%, but they were 0%. And if I had just like, I would have exiled like 6 of their lands out of like they had like 8 lands. So like they
Yeah.
would have been down to nothing. I would have shown them like I would have got Revolve to Consult in the meantime. I would have shown them like 2 or 3 consigned memories in my hand. I think just stuff like that.
Okay, so this was the nightmare scenario and like a risk to playing a deck like this where you basically drew in a match that you were gonna win
Yep.
because you ran out of time.
Yep.
Yeah, it's rough. Okay.
Yep. So, anyways, that evening at dinner or whatever, I'm looking over Melee to see all the people in day 2 with draws because, these are decks I'm probably more likely to play against.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What kind of archetypes do you think got the most draws?
Other control decks would be my thought. I don't. I maybe I could think of something else if I look at the decks.
Yeah, I mean, I guess by metagame percentage, maybe that's true. A very popular deck to get draws were Brood Scale and Eldrazi. Um,
Oh,
maybe
weird.
because of Kozilek's Command and Emrakul the Promised End. I joked this tournament that all of my longest turns of the tournament were ones my opponents were controlling of mine. Like,
Yeah, just because of what they do scry a million times. Is that the
yeah, I mean, the Scribe 14 Kozilek's commands sometimes resolve and stuff like that.
right?
It just takes forever. Um,
Yeah,
and the Emrakul turns always take forever because they don't actually know how to play your deck like to the fullest, even if they can figure it out because they're smart.
sure.
Um, okay,
Okay.
so then day 2,
Yes. So what? You're 5-3-1,
5-2-1.
5-2-1.
And
Right.
wishing
Right.
I
Right.
was 6-2, but
Sure.
not
Sure.
unhappy with 5-2-1. So I went 3-0 in draft and 2-2-1 with my modern deck. I mean, I wasn't like mad or upset about the draw. Really, it really wasn't bothering me at all, to be honest. It was kind of like the exact. I was hoping it doesn't happen again, but the scenario of drawing a game I win was, not something I would hope happens every pro tour that I register a deck like this, but I'm aware it's a risk.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Um, so then the second draft, I first pick Captain America: Wings of Freedom, and I end up just with what I think is a pretty solid blue-white deck. Which are like that's the known best color combo. It seems like. I felt like I had good removal, good curve. Didn't end up getting many strong cards, like any strong rares or anything after that. I'm trying to remember what else I had exactly. Um, this one I didn't take a picture of my deck, and I don't really have it ready. I end up starting O2, just kind of a bummer,
Daggers.
but
So 3-0 with the worst archetype, and then 1-2 with the best one.
yeah, yeah. I win the third round. Um, to beating a red black deck. Um, yeah, I don't remember anything super weird happening. Just kind of how the games played out. I was talking about in kind of the post mortem chat today how Carl Serap Terabad put out a really good YouTube video this week about Marvel Limited, and he didn't even qualify for this pro tour, but he's a longtime Handshake player. This is like his first PT. He's been off the train, and talked about how he always is like metagaming in limited, and talked about how people are playing like these tempo-y flyer decks or these green mid-range decks, and how he felt like he was drafting control decks to beat them. And that's not really like what I thought my two opponents were necessarily doing, but it left me wondering today specifically, like, I'm not really hitting that level at limited, and maybe some of my opponents are, where like I drafted the kind of known thing to draft in this format, and perhaps I just lost because my opponents are just drafting like really all in to beat that thing.
Maybe
And I don't really,
like really prepared
remember all
for
my
it.
picks or whatever to to think what I need to do differently, which could involve drafting a different archetype, or maybe it means I just have to adjust how I draft the blue white deck if that's the seat I'm dealt. I actually remember this draft. I got a pack 2 pick 8 Captain America. If that kind of signifies, that I'm certainly not forcing blue white when I shouldn't be.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, it could maybe just change your perspective of like which cards you're supposed to fill your deck with when you have them. I mean, you only get so many choices in a draft. Um,
Yeah.
once you're drafting that deck, so I don't really know. That's interesting.
Yeah. So let's see. So I mean, I got 2 losses out of the way fast, which means I'd gotten my 4th loss round 10. So the dream of winning the tournament has already died, but I try to stay prioritized on just playing my best. 9 wins is still worth a lot for me.
Yeah.
Um, maybe even 5-0 modern, get like a foil Tameo. So round 12, I pair against Michael DiBenedetto Plummer, who notably won the last Modern Pro Tour. He also won an arena championship in Timeless in the last year too, and he's on Simic Neo form. This seems to be an excellent matchup for me. Game 1, I remember he plays a rider. I chant him. This is on turn 2 on the play. He does this. I chant him, but I don't have a Solitude or a way to answer this rider. What I do have is a counter spell to pass with next turn, but I have to shock myself to do it, and I had to fetch shock to cast a chant on turn 1. And, my opponent has a 0-mana rider in play that's attacking me. And I get all the way down to 3 life. And on turn 5, with all 5 of my mana, I cast the Fairy Time Raveler. He does not cast Veil of Summer in response, which would be very scary. This is game 1, so it can't get disputed. And then I bounce the rider, and I have Counterspell up. He goes to recast the rider. I decide to just counter it to not have to, the body in play is lethal, so that's kind of scary. And then he plays Hooting Mandrills plus Neoform as the last 2 cards to put Atrox into play. And he ends up hitting Rider plus 2 green cards to put a Rider into play. So that's really scary. I think when I had Teferi Minus, I drew Chant. No, I must have not. I draw Chant for turn, and I'm able to kick a Chant on his upkeep. I still have Teferi in play, and then discharge one of those creatures at the end of turn for 3 energy, and then Wrath of the Skies both of them on the next turn.
Nice.
And he's basically out of cards, and he dies to just me playing consults and stuff.
Sure. Okay.
Game 2, I remember keeping a hand that didn't actually have early interaction. No Chance, no Solitude, no Dispute. Maybe it had a consign that I just kind of boarded in just because. Especially because I think I kind of expect Atroxa to be a common recurring element of this matchup because it's kind of interactive, and that means they end up on the Hooting Mandrills thing more often. Or maybe the game goes long and they draw Gristlebrand and they have to get, Galta, so that then I can consign that. But I know as someone who's played a lot of Neoform that kind of sculpting in this matchup is kind of ideal for them. They want to be surveilling and casting these planar genesises to try to get a hand of Pact Negations or Veil of Summers to kind of force through things, because the chant thing is just so annoying for them if they just play a chant. If they just get chanted in response, there's just a lot that can go wrong for them. So anyways, my hand's not very interactive, and we're just kind of sitting there both sculpting a little bit. He's sculpting, I'm just kind of hitting land drops, and then on turn 5 I have Mistrise Ashiok, which I think catches him kind of off guard, and that kind of solos the game because he doesn't have his one of sideboard into the Floodmaw.
Yeah. This kind of sounds like it's also probably a pretty good matchup for you.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Yeah.
It seems quite good.
A little bit of a spoiler. Arguably, this is one of the decks that performed the very best, is the Neoform deck at the event, which is pretty interesting. So, if that deck is picked up more going forward, which I don't know that deck's super popular, but after a result like this, it might get more popular.
Yeah.
It might be a reason to play Jeskai.
So yeah, that was a nice win. Round 13, I play against Devor, also known on D4.
Okay.
If you
Is It
follow,
Prowess?
Yeah, on Is It Prowess. This player, D4, I know them because they stream a lot of Limited on Arena, and I think they're frequently rank 1. And I think they're new to the Pro Tour scene from Arena Championship type stuff.
Good for them.
Yeah, so just kind of a person who loves draft, making it all the way to the top stages. Pretty cool. Prowess makes sense as somebody that maybe doesn't play a lot of Modern to play. That like, what would you expect a limited player to play in Modern? Prowess is probably a
Or
one that makes
burst
sense.
energy, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something that just attacks and doesn't have to care too much about the opposing deck. I think I lose the die roll, which is not going to be great. But I think I draw like I remember I kind of like stabilize at 1 life, and all I have in my hand is Chant and 5 lands, and I draw Scepter in game 1. So I start Scepter kicking chanting them, and it's a race for me to like get Small Teferi in play before they draw any burn spell, and I don't win that race.
Okay.
And then game
Yeah.
two is just like a lot worse for me. I don't even remember what it is, but this matchup's very bad. Their spells are just so cheap, and they're all going after your life total. And like I said, Wrath of the Skies isn't just like some clean thing that always beats them. So not that surprising to lose that one. So now I'm thinking, I got to win 2 out of the next 3 for my reinvite. I play against Etron next round. It's one of the lists from Javier and Nathan Stoyer's team with main deck Disruptor Flutes. This is the one where in game 1, I remember I keep kind of a hand that it's not very disruptive, but I don't have, the consigns in my main deck. I don't have a lot of disruption in this matchup game 1. I believe my hand had like Small Teferi and 2 Consult the Memories, and at least 3 lands and maybe some other spell. And I think I draw just like I think I surveil into just one of my counter spells early. So I'm like passing with counter spell a lot. I remember they played Trinisphere, I let it resolve. And then they cast Devour of Destiny, which is a recurring thing in this matchup where my opponent, playing around counterspell, just will like jam Devour of Destiny because they're hoping I burn a counterspell on it, and if they don't, they'll start hitting me for 6. And I go like all the way to 3 life. End step, play a 3 mana discharge on this Devourer. Untap, I cast a stock up. I'm gonna have 5 more mana available to me this turn. And I don't remember what my hand/stock up exactly contains, but I remember thinking I'm gonna tap out for Wrath of the Skies X equals 3, kill this Trinisphere plus Devourer, not be dead. And my hand is gonna have Teferi, Discharge, Scepter, Chant, and an untapped land that's painless even, or maybe just a fetch land for 1 life because I'm at 3. And they didn't actually have Tron this game; they just had like temples and lands. So they only had like some extra Eldrazi mana, but maybe just like 6 normal mana. And I remember thinking, I'm gonna like tap out for this Wrath of the Skies, have 0 energy left. But if my opponent just goes Karn Coding, I'll just win. And then they untap and they go Karn Coding.
Hmm?
And I just discharge the Karn, play Teferi, play Chant, or play Scepter Chant, and they die.
Yeah.
All in 1 turn. So I think that maybe caught them off guard. But that was a game where I cast like a 2 mana consult and like into a 4 mana consult or whatever while passing with counterspell up.
Is this a difficult deck to play? It kind
My
of feels
deck,
like it needs, yeah. It kind of feels like it needs a lot of planning and understanding your opponent's decks quite a bit.
yeah, these are matchups I got to play a lot in testing, so that definitely helps.
Yeah,
And it's the more difficult thing is you have to play fast.
sure.
I really enjoy kind of playing fast, so that was actually one of the more enjoyable things to me.
Funny enough, you
Um,
get an excuse to play
yeah,
fast almost.
exactly.
Yeah, I kind of like that too. Kind of a
You have
fun
to
thing.
accept though. The draw thing is one thing. You also have to accept, in testing. Sometimes we did Cockatrice, sometimes we did Magic Online. If you look at Magic Online in my testing, even against my teammates that I think are taking reasonable amounts of time, the chess clock disparity, like your opponent will always take more time than you. I think with this deck a lot in a 50-minute round where you're sharing a clock, you're just gonna have to accept that like their turns are going to be really hard because of all the possible things you could have and they don't know about.
Right.
And your turns are mostly just reacting to their turns. So I think oftentimes a lot of the parts of the game are easy, but I think knowing that you need to be like pressuring towards closing on your opponent is harder. Um, and on that note too, people kept telling me that my deck was like a nightmare matchup for Amulet, and that makes sense to me if you only play online because I don't think Amulet could win 2 games against you in 25 minutes.
Oh,
So like I think they'll
okay.
just always time out.
If
But
anything, it's just that. Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Um
Okay.
Part of
So,
why I registered Ashiok in the first place is because I believed it was a very clock positive card in that matchup because my opponent wouldn't get long like your Amulet opponent will not have a long turn if there's an Ashiok in play.
Because it just shuts him down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then also, like in that brute scale game, for example, I forgot to mention I had that Ashiok in play. Or I think I did mention, but like I still had, Mill 16 lined up that game. So like
Sure.
that's part of why I wish I went to turn 5 of turns, because I could have been like, ultimately you're gonna lose to decking in like 5 or 6 turns because they had gone through a lot of their deck,
It's not that
like
long. Yeah.
I'm just gonna mill you 16 and you're gonna have like 4 cards left.
Yeah, that's always a tough spot, even for your opponent.
If they said they wanted the AMP, I can't blame them. We'll get to later in the story, but I play a match for AMPs this tournament.
Yeah.
That's a whole match, not a draw versus a loss.
Yeah,
But
for
still.
sure. It's it's tough when you're in that position. Um.
Um,
Anyways, so
Game two, these games on the draw versus Etron are certainly can be tough when they have their really strong starts. Because I think once my opponent has like turn 2 K command for 2 into Karn or something, and I die. I don't have the draw that lines up well into that. Game 3, they mulled 4. My hand is just like perfect. It just has like 3 lands to Fairy, Scepter, Chant, Prismatic Ending. And I jam the Scepter Chant on turn 2, and my opponent draws their card and concedes. So a second turn 2 kill for me of the tournament.
we had a question for will there be called Chaos Magic? Will there be a turn 2 kill on
Yeah,
camera?
I saw that.
And it didn't really happen because like a Storm player didn't do it. What did happen is someone essentially won on turn 2 with Neoform. They they put a Ureni in play against the Goryo's deck and attacked him on turn 3, and then they conceded. So that was kind of like a turn 2 kill, but there was no actual turn 2 kill. So I'm glad to hear you got so many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So round 15 versus Corey Burkhart, someone I've worked with a handful of times before. Super nice guy. He's playing the exact same 75 as Michael was earlier on Neoform. They're on the same team. Also, both Michael and Corey are people I sat across and played against in Vegas.
Oh, interesting.
In the team event.
Yeah.
Game 1, my opening hand on, I don't remember if I'm in the player draw, but I was very excited to see this hand. It had a fetch land as the only land. It had 2 Orm's Chants, 2 Solitudes, a Prismatic Ending, and a Galvanic Discharge. So kind of even if I don't even hit my land drops, I have a lot of play against them to like chant them in response to a rider and then kill it with Solitude. I'm not immediately under the gun, and I get to fetch a Surveil or whatever, but I'm not hitting my land drop this game. And I draw a 3rd chant, and I'm discarding the hand size, and then he plays a rider, and I chant him, and he says, okay, and then I decide to untap, and then I evoke Solitude, and then it gets consigned. And then I have to like chant and Solitude him again later, and so that was just like horrible. I should have just evoked Solitude on the turn he couldn't cast spells. So I kind of threw game 1, but this matchup's very good, and I just win both sideboard games with like chants and the stuff. I remember game 2. Go on my turn. He has 4 disputes in the board, and on my turn 3 on the play, I just like I have Solitudes, I think, but I don't have like chance or any reason to pass with mana. And obviously I could bluff or whatever, but I remember I had 2 Small Fairies. And oh yeah, I jammed High Noon on turn 2 on the play, and that resolved. So that's kind of helpful that he didn't even play a creature yet. So I just jammed Small Fairy, and Corey says, "Fuck, you have no fear," which indicates to me this is about to resolve.
Yeah.
Which is not something like, not surprising that it resolves, just 4 disputes, and they got to keep this deck. I think Neoform is not a deck that aggressively mulligans. I would say
Just because they need so many raw
many
resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And certainly they wouldn't mulligan for interaction of all things, right? So,
Yeah.
the combo of High Noon and Small Teferi is really good against Neoform, as it turns out, because they have to play a creature into a Teferi that can then just bounce the creature.
Sure.
And he doesn't draw Wistfulness for the High Noon. And so he kind of just gets beaten by that. It takes forever. And then game 3, I just have the right interaction. I think he has something to go for kind of early. And then I think, no, maybe he doesn't do anything early. But on turn 5, I remember I played Chant. He's terrified. He's about to get Ashioked and never be able to win. I play Small Teferi. He's a little relieved, even though it's kind of horrible for him. I plus it. And the next turn, he casts Hooting Mandrills or Rider or something, and I chant him again, and he's like, "Yeah, that sucks," because then I just get to bounce the thing again and untap with all my mana, and things just kind of go poorly from there. The unfortunate thing is that Corey really needed 10 wins this tournament to re-queue, so I'm knocking him out of his 10th win. It sucks because if
Hmm.
I had won this round versus somebody else and paired against somebody like Corey in the last round, I think I would have been more likely to concede, which leads to the story of round 16, where my opponent, who is, by the way, my round 10 opponent from draft this tournament, again, French player, asked me if this match is worth an invite for me. And I don't lie, and I say it's not, and asked me if I'd concede and they'd really appreciate it. And I give it a good think, and I'd already been thinking about it before, and I say no. Um,
Mm. They needed a qualification.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the problem with that, this is not somebody I know at all. Um, and if I concede in that spot, I'm expecting a monetary reward, right? That's kind of the expectation, and I assume my opponent also is willing to give me some kind of monetary reward. But a win at the next Pro Tour could be worth a lot, and I keep scrapping together 9 or 10 wins at these things, and one less win at the next one is kind of right in the threshold of wins I keep getting.
Yeah.
Um, so if I get exactly 9 wins at the next Pro Tour, I'm going to feel really good about the fact that I played and won this round. Um,
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
and
that makes a lot of sense to me that what you would play. Would you have conceded to someone you knew? Is that why you brought that up?
to someone I know and is kind of an
Yeah.
outstanding figure, and the thing is, we're
Someone
not
you
going to be
really
allowed at the
like.
table to communicate what I think the concession's worth, right? So I want somebody that I think could have a reasonable discourse with me about it after the match. Does
I
that make
see.
sense? Like,
It does.
and Corey Burkhart's like a perfect example of someone that I think would have a reasonable discourse of like, hey, like this is worth a win at the next Pro Tour for me. I don't just want to, pretend I get the money if I had won and you had lost instead. I think it's worth more than that. Stuff like that, like I'm worried if I concede here, I'm gonna get like $500, which is just like maybe a third of what I'm actually expecting.
Right. I see.
Um,
Yeah. I
which
mean, I've
might
never
sound
been
like a
in
lot,
that
but yeah,
position. Well, I've never been in that position. I don't know what people typically do.
yeah. So at Lauren Eclipse, I was in the opposite position, and then against Javier Dominguez, where I needed a 10th win, and he didn't
Yeah.
concede, and that's kind of significant, and I don't blame him. And that I get that, like in this spot specifically, I know these points won't matter for Worlds. Earlier in the year, like you never know, this could matter for Worlds, so it's even harder to concede. At this
Sure.
one, yeah, it doesn't matter for Worlds, so sure. But I just think it's a bit too awkward. It's also things where I think I'm favored in this matchup. My opponent probably thinks they're favored in this matchup. This is kind of a nice side note from this tournament. If you look at the Karsten data under Jeskai control, you'll see that Jeskai control went 3-8 against Eldrazi Tron. So it sounds like a really bad matchup, but do you know who got all 3 of the wins? Me. And 0 of the losses. So I think it's a great matchup.
uh,
Like,
Funny enough.
yeah.
There's more data under Azorius control, is that right? No, I
Yeah, the
guess not.
Sanctum Jeskai control list also had no counter spells.
I see.
Which, I'm only playing a few counter spells, but I'll say the threat of getting your Karn counterspelled would mean that you play things that aren't Karn first, maybe.
Yeah.
Whereas if you played against the Jeskai control list with 0 counterspells, they would just cast Karn first all the time in game 1, which would
Right.
just be like very problematic, I imagine.
Well, the people that didn't splash, that just played Blue White control, went 5-0 against Tron.
Sure, yeah. So
So
that
there you go. Yeah,
people who had counterspells probably versus
probably.
yeah,
I assume that's what you have instead of the discharges, is some number of those.
yeah. Usually more prismatic endings too, which honestly, discharge is pretty good against Eldrazi Tron. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I like it more than Solitude even. So
Sure. I don't see prismatic as
especially because I
great.
play the tunes. The
Right.
tunes, by the way, I would keep playing 2 tunes, and I'm
Yeah.
saying
Okay.
that where every other list in the tournament plays like 0. It seems like a mopey card, but when you think about it, it's kind of a mana ramping kind of card for Wrath of the Skies. which
Yeah, I
is like
mean,
a powerful thing to have in a clunky control deck to some
I
extent.
know I've brought this up before. It's just my only point of reference, but I played a good amount of historic when like the Modern Horizons stuff first came out, and I really liked Tune because I would just use it with Wrath of the Skies and Discharge.
Nasif asked me how many I had. Was he was going? He's just thumbing through my deck whenever he finds a card. He asked me how many I have.
Mm-hmm.
And he got the tune. He's like, "How many?" And I was like, "Two." I always really loved one so much that I had a two. And he was kind of like, "Yeah, I really love one." So I could believe it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Ultimately, you got 10 wins, right?
Yeah, I got
So you
38th place. Pretty cool.
very
$2,000.
nice. Yeah.
Um,
What kind of Tomio do you get? A Reggie?
just yeah, 32 is the foil one. Unfortunately,
Okay.
I don't think
Well.
anybody with my record got that. So
Okay.
if that draw was a win, I would have gotten a foil Tameo, but I also would have been in a different draft pod and played against different people. So
Yeah. Well, you somehow managed to pull it out every time. Congratulations.
thanks.
Um, do you recommend this deck going forward? And if you do you recommend any changes?
Yeah, I want to keep working on this deck. Honestly, my wins were some of the more, you know, fun wins I've had in Modern. Makes sense. My deck is playing long interactive games.
Yeah.
Not always interactive, I guess. It's kind of a prison deck too. Um, just today, I've been scoping out. There's a Spotlight series, The Hobbit, in Dallas in September 4th,
Yeah.
and I was talking with my fiance about if it was cool for me to go. Because honestly, looking at the flight and hotel costs, if I split the room with my friends, I could be in a position where if I like top 32 that, I would be up money, which is not like the worst
Yeah.
kind of middle ground to me. I don't like when I'm just like only hoping to top eight the tournament.
Sure.
Even top
Yeah.
64, if the foil promo is worth a few $100, that would be break even ish.
Yeah.
I'd say it
Dallas
cost me like
Dallas
a
is
five
nice,
hundred
pretty
dollars.
cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see here. I have the data from the Pro Tour. We could touch on that a bit, I guess.
Yeah, let's talk. Yeah, so I would definitely say don't look at the Jeskai control data for my deck, right? Because it's kind of really warped. A bunch of people played a specific Sanctum list, and I played my own list that doesn't have Days Undoing. So none of these decks really seem like they're even
Yeah.
represented. If you click the stock Magic Online Jeskai control deck, it's different from like both mine and Sanctum's lists.
Mm-hmm. So just a bird's eye view for people listening, and they don't see the data on the screen. It's like Jeskai Control did quite bad.
Yeah.
Boris Energy did quite bad. Is it Affinity did quite bad. These are all really popular decks. Ruby Storm did quite bad. Boros Land Destruction, pretty popular deck on Magic Land. I know didn't do terrible, but 48.6 win percentage. Um, the stars of the show were kind of the Eldrazi decks. I mean, oddly enough, Brood Scale combo, which was really popular, did kind of middle of the road.
Yep.
52%.
Same with Espergorios.
Espergorios, yeah, which Espergorios was a deck that seemed really good to me, but that only okay. And then,
Yep.
yeah, the Simic Neoform, big standout, 61%. What about this Eldrazi Trudge? What does this mean? This has
Yeah,
the fight rigging
really
deck.
It is. Yeah, the one kind of invented by Aspiring Spike. I feel like okay saying that. Honestly, I'm not sure that this deck would be a deck a single person had played online if not for him. Often I don't like giving credit to people who build decks that I think they just would have shown up anyways. But this one I'm not sure would have shown up anyways.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And that's pretty rare that that even happens
Yeah.
in a format as big as Modern that you can attribute an idea to.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So using
What
Slumbering
I think
Trudge.
a bunch of Japanese players showed up with this,
Yes.
right? And did really well.
Yeah, and ultimately, this is like a sample size worth of 9 players at the pre-T. So, still not that big.
Sure. But they did well.
They did.
Maybe got a little advantage of having an unknown quantity.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't, think about that matchup even during the tournament, but I was like, oh, that's kind of scary. They have like some angles of attack that Consign doesn't work against or whatever. And then watching a Spike VOD mentioned how Teferi Time Raveler stops fight rigging from ever casting the spell, and I'm like, oh well, that's gotta be kind of good for me.
Yeah. I guess none of the players that played it made top 8.
I thought Ken Yukihiro played it.
Oh, he did. Okay. I
Yeah.
control F Trudge and didn't show up, but maybe I messed something up. Yeah, so Ken Yukihiro made top 8 with it. Nice. and then the tournament was won. I mean, it was draft, so they didn't play top eight constructed, which I still feel so about. I do like watching constructed top eights.
Yeah.
Also, I think it's pretty interesting to see best of five and construct the matchups. But the person that won was Yuki Ichikawa. He drafted and didn't play a Simic Neoform deck, which is what he made top eight with. But
Yep.
um, that was Pro Tour. Marvel superheroes.
Yeah.
I will
I'll
go
add
ahead.
really quick. The Neoform data is kind of interesting to me because that was a deck I seriously considered for this Pro Tour, and
Oh,
I felt
okay.
like I was kind of the one. How do I put it? In the same way that I was kind of the chant leader in my Discord, I would say I was the Neoform leader in my team's Discord. And I had a day. Our Eldrazi Tron list was a little bit more hateful than normal. It didn't have Glaring Fresh Fakers and just had more stuff like Chalice of the Void or Disruptor Flute, sometimes even Warping Whale. Um, I don't think this is representative of the matchup, but I had a day where I went like 0-20 against Eldrazi Tron's Neoform.
Is that what kind of pushed you off the deck ultimately? You think?
Well, I also thought the Ruby Storm matchup was a little bad. Um, it's kind of interesting because the Neoform deck can be pretty good at, like turn two, put something into play, but if they don't have like an extra pact or something, then the Galta plus Xenagos kill won't happen. Or sometimes it's turn three, put something into play too because of sculpting reasons or it's Eldritch Evolution that you have. But the problem I was having is I would put Gristlebrand into play versus Ruby Storm, where maybe they already resolved Ral or Ruby Medallion on turn two, and then like they could just kill me through like my endurance and pact negation or something that I draw into. If they
Sure.
like started their turn with one of those resources already in play, especially Ral. Ral just made it kind of easy for them to basically beat, all the weird free interactions by just continuing to cast good spells. Um, Whereas, like for example, I think Neoform's really good against Amulet because like you get the Crystal Brand into play and like one pact negation covers their whole turn and you're fine.
Yeah.
Um, but the Storm deck I felt like could win through a Gristlebrand. But they went 4-1 against Ruby Storm, which that's a small sample thing, and 7-4 versus Etron. And admittedly, these Japanese players had main deck Nature's Claim. That would be a huge deal. So that that makes sense. That both the Tron lists are going to be less hateful, and the Neoform list was more prepared. I could definitely see that bringing up that matchup a lot. But I guess I would hope if I was playing a deck like Neoform versus a deck like Tron, you'd kind of hope it's a slam dunk matchup. But it didn't really seem that way to me.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Um. So as I said before, last week, me and Jarvis had a little, competition. We filled out this, questions mostly just as an excuse to you give us prompts to like talk about modern and the pro tour and stuff. But I did go through it and tally it all up. Um, some of the questions we asked. I'm not going to read them all now. I will be posting all this in the Patreon if you guys want to check that out for free. You don't have to be a member. You just go to our Patreon. Or you could probably sign. You probably have to sign up to our Patreon, but you could be a free member and just see everything. Um, we did like what's the most played archetype. He guessed Boris Affinity or Boris Energy, and I guessed Affinity, and they were like exactly the same,
That Yeah, they were exactly the same. So that's funny.
which is funny. Neither of us got the most main deck card, stuff like that. So that's what we go through. Ultimately, we actually agreed on a lot of things, so we didn't have that many disagreements. So we had a lot of ties, but overall, the score was in terms of I didn't count ties, but the score was 5 for me in terms of things I got right, and Jarvis got 3 things right. So
There you go, scoreboard.
scoreboard. A couple of the fun ones were we had Hero of the Weekend, like which heroic card will have the best weekend. This one I awarded it to me, but maybe I would have felt worse about it if our scores were a little closer, which they are kind of. So I guess we could have tied if I put this the other way. But he guessed Ragavan and I guessed Quantum Riddler. And I just thought that since Boris Energy did so poorly, and that's kind of like the Ragavan deck, that Quantum Riddler did slightly better, even though Quantum Riddler as a whole didn't do super great either. But like, Esper Gorgios played it at a positive win rate. And oddly, the Domain Zoo deck has changed a bit, and it seems like
Playing
regularly
both.
incorporates both Riddler and Ragavan. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah.
and that deck did pretty well. So that's
Oh, it
kind of a
did.
tie there too. Yeah. Um, so yeah. Oh, and the most villainous card. He did win the most villainous card because I said Kappa Cannoneer, and Affinity did pretty poorly, and he said Cleansing Wildfire, and Boros Land Destruction did slightly better than that. So
By the way, something I've never seen discussed with Boros Land Destruction that my team picked up on, not available every game with any deck. They were talking about it with Ruby Storm, which has a lot of fetch lands, and my deck has a decent amount of fetch lands too. Some games, if you're ever playing against Boros Land Destruction with a deck with fetch lands, your opening hand might have a lot of fetch lands. You can just play them and not crack them, and your opponent like can't cast their spells.
yeah,
It's really effective against them, and not something I see people talk about. Where
funny.
you just start the game with three fetch lands and don't crack them,
Yeah, it really delays their process, and then you crack them all at once and do
and then they're
something.
stuck with a bunch of 2 mana cyclers in their hand, to like all on the same turn, which is really
Yeah,
clunky and hard to deploy while you've already done some things. Instead
we
of
did get to see that deck a bit on coverage, and I really liked it. It looked like a sweet deck.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's a deck I was goldfishing this week and talking to the creator about, CFT Sock Rejang. I don't know if you saw them backup feature match in the deck they
oh
play.
yeah, the Wilderness Regulation deck.
Yeah, the deck that really has no win cons.
Right, crazy. I looked at that deck and I was like, man, so we really just gotta like regrowth our chance
It's kind of a like
in
a
large
full
enough
lock by the end.
quantities.
Yeah, and
Is it a full lock or is it just like a lock
well, you
of
can
lock?
like use endurance to keep shuffling them back, and your consults
I
are big
see.
enough that like you would find another consult enchant like every time.
Yeah, I just figured it was like you would lock them enough to where
But
your creatures kill them.
I'm kind of worried you're like vulnerable to graveyard hate and vulnerable to like people messing with your Rex.
Yeah, that seems a little
And
rough.
then I saw they also went 6-3-1. And I goldfished it, and I definitely feel like this deck does some nice things, but also they said they're not sure how good their deck is, and if you look at their matchups, even though they went 6-3-1, at one point in the tournament they were, I guess they finished 9-6-1. So at one point in the tournament they were 5-6-1, and then they proceeded to pair into Boros Land Destruction 3 times and 2 at all of them. So
Must be
that's a good
nice.
matchup,
Those
I
poor
guess.
Boris Land Destruction players.
Yeah. Um, Pretty funny, but yeah.
Yeah.
I like what the deck is doing. Like, it makes sense to me, but I have a lot of concerns after just really only goldfishing it a lot. And that, I don't even have concerns about the like ending the game thing, because the way I was goldfishing it and when they were recommended was kind of a switch around to include Blue Sun Zenith, which I think would just kill your opponent. But then, like, what if that gets like exiled or something?
Yeah, but that's like another resilient angle. Like maybe you could play it instead of Sphinx's Rev.
Yeah, they still wanted a life gain spell, but basically they
I
thought you
see.
don't have to play endurance. You could just play. You could either just like cut endurance to the sideboard and play Zenith, or like change the rev to Blue Sun Zenith, and then also change the endurance to like a card that gains life, just to have the
Damn.
life gain available to
Y-
stabilize.
You would definitely get me to sign up to play a Blue Sun Zenith Wilderness Reclamation deck if I was playing Modern.
Yeah,
That
I
sounds
mean,
pretty sweet.
I think this deck, if like undisrupted, definitely just like gets online pretty fast with Wreck, and does lock your opponent out pretty fast.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're running out of time. You want to give me the final result of what happened at your team tournament? I know you played a team tournament last weekend.
Yeah, so I teamed with Boulder teammates Collins Mullen and Jesse Pilland. Um, and they unfortunately both needed PT invites. We did not get them. We did not
Bummer.
top for the tournament. Day one, I had a blue white deck with 0 rares except for the blue white rare land. But it was a pretty like exceptionally good mix of commons and uncommons, like Political Triumph, Double Agent 13, good removal. We had a black red deck with Avengers Under Siege and Super Scroll, Ares, just some good stuff. And we had a really cool green blue deck, Splashing Wolverine, with 2 Absorbing Man, Moon Girl, and Double Dinosaur and Cosmic Cube. And I feel like one of my best contributions to that day, because we're laying out all our strong cards and removal and lands for this team sealed pool, and kind of making an outline of what 3 decks we might want to look at to start. And we talk about some of the things, and they didn't involve white, so I grab all the white cards. There's just like 20 good cards in front of me, So I'm like, I'll just figure it out. Probably blue is always going to be the best if we have extra blue stuff. We had like Captain America too, and two blue white dual lands. And I noticed there's no rares. And so I'm like working with the Cosmic Cube in front of me for kind of some extra power in the deck, but I'm looking at this green blue deck across from me that has two Absorbing Man and Moon Girl and Double Dinosaur. And I'm like, the Cosmic Cube is just way too good. It's good. It's better in green generally because green has high power things.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, all day. Jesse, I think, had our best deck in that green blue deck. I watched like multiple times. I'd look over and see like Cosmic Cube being played, targeted with Absorbing Man, or triggering Moon Girl, Double Dinosaur, attacking for 6 with Cube, stuff like that. Just made a ton of sense.
Nice.
I went 5-3 personally. We went 7-1. I think that was mostly due to good loss distribution. I don't know exactly what my teammates' records are. I know the round we lost, all three of us lost. Um,
I mean, that's kind of what team tournaments are.
yeah,
Really
if
needs
you
your
think
wins
about
to
it,
line up.
yeah, I like mathed it out while walking. Like the worst record you could have as a team while finishing 7-1 is like 14-10. I don't think we did that bad, but we might have went like 16-8 or something.
Wow. Okay.
Um, like 5-3, 5-3, and 6-2 is like
Yeah.
our three records.
Okay. I mean, that's really good. How'd you do day two?
Yeah, we thought our pool was better day two. I ended up playing a mostly mono blue deck, splashing Photon Blast Barrage of like all things, and then also a little green splash for
Interesting.
like a second copy of Kazar we had available, and a Go Nuts that the green white deck, splashing black, had a lot of removal. And then we had another black red deck, not with Avengers Under Siege this time, but with like Super Scroll and Double Ares, a little bit more aggressively slanted. We gave it like an equipment sub theme, so it got like our John Walker, and it had a stolen Stark tech and like a sideboard Hawkeye's bow if it wanted. Um, we went 2-4, unfortunately.
Oh,
I think,
rough.
yeah, I think I went 3-3. I think one of the losses I could have played a little tighter and gotten there. It would have been close depending on exactly how my opponent just like was this red green deck that all three games I feel like they kind of just like curved out perfectly, and I stabilized one of them and almost stabilized another one, and then another match I lost, kind of the one I was like saltiest about, where I just like felt like I was a really good matchup into my opponent's deck. They were kind of a black red scrappy aggro deck, not like the strongest things I've seen. Um, and I didn't draw any Futurist Forges the entire match when I had two in my deck, which I think at like at any point in time would have just like won the game because it was kind of attrition based. But also at the end of game three, which I lost, I noticed my opponent had drawn like 13 spells and four lands. Like just a
Yeah.
crazy distribution.
Yeah. I mean, that sure happens.
Yeah.
Um. All right. Well, team tournaments. Yeah. The last one. How'd you do in the last one? You guys did quite a bit better in the last one, right?
Yeah, we went 10-4, but it was smaller. We got top 12. So we won 750 each. Everybody on day two got the foil Electra, which we immediately sold for $450 because Colin's really good about
Nice.
selling those first because you get more money if you sell them first, basically.
Gotcha.
Um,
Yeah.
this tournament we got 40th, which meant we all got the foil Electra and nothing else. But I still have this foil Electra, so
Because it's maybe not worth as much now.
yeah. To be clear, I told Colin this too when he said the offer was 450. I said, if in a year from now you saw this foil Electro was on TCG Player for $1,000 and you took it to a vendor, I bet they'd tell you 450. So in my mind, that means they're saying it's going to be worth $1,000 on their website, which is a pretty good deal to be.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Okay. Well. Welcome back. Just
Thanks.
a preview for Vokes over the next couple of weeks. We've got some things coming up. We've got The Hobbit coming out, so we'll have our top 10 episode soon. And then the next qualifier weekend's Timeless. So, like, we're probably going to do a Thomas episode. I've been playing a little bit of it. Seems like kind of a terrible format, to be honest, but we'll wait till we get there
Yeah.
before I
And then,
complain about that.
Yeah, I want to do a modern reassessment too.
Yeah, we
wanna-
should do a modern tier list or something.
I don't know if I'll write a guide. I'll look up exactly when the next RCs are. Like I said, I kind of want to go to the Spotlight. If I go to the Spotlight, I imagine I'm playing the same deck. I might play Goryo's. I'm kind of just a big fan now of trying to play a little bit more interactive games in Modern. I had quite a lot of fun. And I also think, for me specifically, even testing with my Boulder teammates, I've come to realize that, like, I know, like, so much about what's going on in Modern that, like, I'm not at some disadvantage if the game goes long or my opponent has a weird deck. Like, I kind of just know how a lot of the matchups play out.
At the very least, yeah, you might even
Yeah.
be at an advantage.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, well, stay tuned, folks. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Okay, sign off. Jacob barely makes it home. I watched The Odyssey in theater. I hadn't seen a movie in theaters in a long time, and I had a really good time watching The Odyssey. Did you have an Odyssey on your way
Yeah, I
back
guess
home?
so. Um, so I'm gonna preface this. I'm not gonna try to say it in an offensive way,
Uh-oh.
but I found pushing a stroller around Europe that the courtesy you expect in America that people will get out of your way is basically non-existent there. So I'm going to start by
Weird.
saying that somehow on the sidewalks of Amsterdam, pushing my baby around, I felt like I was playing a game of chicken against the people walking towards me. Which is that, Amsterdam is full of bike lanes. They have just dedicated bike lane infrastructure. They're one of the most bike friendly cities in the world, I imagine.
Yeah.
Um, and basically, the sidewalks are tiny, and I'm pushing this jumbo American sized stroller down the sidewalk, to be honest. And people would just like I don't know what they think is going to happen. I'm not going to push the stroller into the bike lane. Like they're going to have to step into the bike lane or step to the side and let me pass by them. And
Yeah.
those things happen inevitably, but it's just like always the last possible millisecond that it could happen. Um, so I'm just
Okay.
building this expectation. The time I'm there, it's all fine. Other kind of culture differences. There's no tipping in Europe or whatever, but that also leads to I found the waiter service. You have to get their attention. Like they're not going to come to your table.
I see.
Y-
They're
y-
not trying extra hard.
Yeah, it's not even that. It's like if you want the waiter to do something at your table, you probably should just go walk up and ask them because you try to play this little mini game of like making eye contact with them, and then maybe for
Yeah.
half a second they lock eyes with you, and then they like pretend that didn't happen and just continue fucking off.
Funny. Yeah.
Like, but, I get it. They're just a waiter or whatever. Like they're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
invested in
yeah.
their job and they're not getting tipped.
Yeah.
Um, there were some like exceptionally nice waiters. Those just make your day every time you're in Europe.
Sure.
Um, then, lots of different options for public transit while we're there. We also used Uber van a lot to fit all of our stuff. We brought the car seat that like attaches into the stroller, so we could even buckle in our baby or whatever in these vehicles. But the trains, we learned on like the first train we took ever that they're like really overpacked, and we saw this like completely underused first class thing, and we said, okay, rest of the trip we're buying first class tickets for more space. Then we end up taking like two more trains to be clear this trip because we go to Ghent and Brussels, and then back to Amsterdam for our flight. Is how this trip goes. Which Ghent, by the way, awesome. There was like a festival all week there, literally called like the Ghent Festival through translation. There was like concerts all over the city. Super cool. Um, the second time we don't get to use our first class ticket because it's like up, it's like a two-story train randomly, and it's upstairs. And we managed to get into like a handicap spot or like a bike spot, and we have a decent amount of space, and it's kind of a fine trip. We had to sit. Olivia had to sit with the baby in one spot, and I had to sit in another spot. But she made company with a handicapped woman from Bruges that had a lot of cool things to say. Then, on our final trip back to the Amsterdam airport, basically directly from Brussels, um, we get the first class ticket. It's looking great, like a great idea. Then the second stop of this trip, it gets completely packed. Questionable if all these people actually had first class tickets or not, but I'm not the guy in charge that gets to figure that out. But I kind of doubt they all had first class tickets. People sitting on the floor, people standing. We had already cemented our seats at least, so we're feeling comfortable. But then we get off at the airport and kind of going back to, people not being courteous of those with the baby. People are just, we're trying to get, all our stuff ready and this baby, he's not crying or anything, thank God. He's sleeping. Get him in the stroller. Get the, like the stroller folds, unfold it, get him in the stroller, get our luggage, get off the train. But while we're doing all this, people are just like nobody's stopping for us. They're just walking right by us, stuff like that. So it's taking us a while. Olivia gets off the train holding the baby, has some of our luggage. I have the stroller with my backpack in it instead of a baby. The door closes in front of me. Olivia's off the train. I'm on the train. I press the door open button. Someone on the outside presses the door open button. I'm realizing it's not going to open. They just close it and it doesn't reopen for anything. And I press like an emergency button. No, it doesn't do anything. Um,
Huh.
so I'm kind of a panic attack. And this
Yeah.
airport employee, not a train employee notably, but an airport employee, kind of reassures me. Next stop is 6 minutes away. So I'm just going to have to get off, get on another train back. I'm really, I'm able to text Olivia or whatever, but still, it's just like one of the scariest things in my life. I think we're gonna miss the flight because of it, stuff like that. We get to it. We're definitely not gonna make our flight, but what we learned is we were never gonna make our flight anyways,
Okay.
because the Amsterdam airport really sucks.
Mm.
We were getting there, maybe like an hour early. This
Yeah.
delay made it half an hour early instead. To boarding time, not departure time, to be clear. Um, and then they can't book us a new flight home till the next day. So we have to get a hotel. They charge us a fee for the rebooking thing because it's not their fault. Um, and they tell us come 3 hours early. I'm like, okay. We show up 3 hours early. Their passport scanner is like not working. They have to get in a line to like manually do it, check our bags. We get to our gate at like the exact second that our time to board with the baby happens.
Yeah.
So 3 hours early, right on time, as it turns out.
Holy moly. I
Yeah,
thought US airports were bad.
yeah.
I thought it was a miracle they work as well as they do.
Then, as we're like in this flight, I'm looking at these tickets, which we did not book because they were reassigned. We're flying to Salt Lake City and then back home instead of like Minneapolis or whatever. We flew up to Salt Lake City on the way there, and I'm thinking we only have like a 30-minute layover,
Yeah.
which is just like as soon as we get to line customs, I'm not even in a rush anymore. I'm just like we're just not making this flight.
Right.
I get to the gate. The lady at the gate, knew there was like an infant and a family, and as soon as I'm there holding the baby, walking ahead of Olivia, just making him happy because he really likes being held and pretending that he's kind of flying or whatever. Um, she says, "Yeah, sorry, I tried to hold as long as I could." I'm like, "No, no, no, it's fine. I just can't believe this like lady who booked this for us even did it
Sure.
this way."
Thought this would work. Yeah.
And she's standing there and being really nice, and we're right back in America and have a really nice person. It's kind of refreshing. But then, um, just like 5 or 10 minutes into it, I just kind of just finally ask, I'm like, "Do we get to get home today?" And she's like, "Oh yeah." And I'm like, "That's all I wanted to hear." Like, awesome. Like, great news.
Funny.
like, so we have to spend like 3 more hours in the airport or whatever, and not the end of the world,
Not
and we
too
get
bad.
home
Yeah.
safe. But it's like, why not like ask me? The person who booked this saw I was there with a baby and how much luggage we had. Like, why not be like, do you want to try to make a 30-minute layover or do you want the 4 hour layover? Because I would have just said, just give
Right.
me the 4 hour layover. It's okay.
At this point. Yeah.
Like, not even, just even planning ahead. Like, I know
Sure.
we have to go through customs. Even if we don't have to go through customs, it's a close call. There's also only one person working customs, which the lady at the gate that reassigned our flight was pretty disappointed to hear that because that's actually just apparently Homeland Security's like thing. So
Hmm.
not even a airport staffing issue.
Yeah. It's funny. You talk about like the different cultures and like treating babies and stuff. I remember when I went to Brussels for a pro tour in the past. Um, I was by myself, and this was quite a long time ago, so I'm trying to put this memory back together properly. But basically, there was an ad, like you're walking on. It was like in a mall. And you're walking down in the mall, and they have like a few big ads, like like as tall as you are, and they're obviously in a different different language. They're in like some variation of French or whatever. And it was like this mom breastfeeding, and I found it like it to be a really interesting ad. So for some reason, I like decided to translate it. I think I take a picture and decide to translate it, and I learned that it was something like baby or planet killer question mark. And so I realize it's like propaganda, you know, thinking, however, what it, not even to a negative or a positive, however you think of propaganda, but it's just like, you know, like a climate uh, apocalypse kind of propaganda. And I was like, huh, interesting. And this was a long time ago. And since then, I'm like, just now, I looked up like the birth rate in Brussels, and they have like a 1.3 birth rate, which is like below replacement level. So that could be like kind of really bad for the country. So it's interesting that they must have this cultural zeitgeist where like maybe babies aren't very important, or maybe like families aren't that high class or status, you know? And that's
Yeah,
maybe
I'm not
part of the
sure.
reasons why you're treated that way.
Yeah, because it's like I've been to Europe a few times for magic tournaments too. The wait staff thing I know about, the no AC thing I know
Yeah.
about.
And obviously
Probably why
Europe is a
the
big place, lots of different
sharing the
countries.
sidewalk thing I didn't really know about beforehand is because I'm just the type to just step out of other people's ways and
Yeah.
walk past them pretty much instant as soon as I like notice that's going to happen. But yeah, that was definitely really weird. Um, I also wanted to add, Olivia and I just went out to dinner before we started recording this. I got back home and said I was ready to record with you. We both ordered iced tea. I think our waiter, she came to our table like 10 times, unprompted during the course of this dinner. We both ordered iced teas and we weren't even like halfway done with the iced tea. She brought a second one for each of us.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and I was just saying on the drive home, I'm like, she came to our table more than all of the other waiters combined in 2 weeks in Europe, I think. And I'm not like exaggerating. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like really funny.
Yeah. I wonder if people from other countries notice, because I know that being in the service industry myself, that sometimes people from other countries like are either annoyed or at least unsure about like the tip culture or whatnot. And I get the perspective, either way. Like, why don't you pay your employees living wage and you wouldn't have to tip, yada yada yada. There's not here to debate the whole argument, but I wonder if they do notice, like, oh wow, I get really good service here in the U.S.
Yeah, or
I
I
go,
get
well,
I get free
yeah.
refills and my water's free.
Yeah, if they even notice.